Sikaledi Africa, malupakani suhondolwayo. Izo imitanda soyetu. Kosi sikelera, tina lusapolwayo. Morena muluka si chabasa Yesu. Si Chabasa, South Africa. Aiti blau van ons hemel.
Uit die diepte van ons hier.
Oor ons ewige gebergtes, want die kranse aanvoer gee.
Soms the call to come together.
And united we shall stand. Let us live and strive for freedom in South Africa, our land.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar, which is supposed to be the launch of the Social Cohesion Dialogue Series that will kick off on the 2nd of June in Cape Town and in other venues throughout. We will talk about that at the end of the webinar to give you a sense of what activities are coming. But the purpose of today is to really set the tone for that Social Cohesion Dialogue, which is a civil society initiative convened by Ms. Delene Mark, who's the Chief Executive of Hope Africa and a development activist throughout her life. She has put together this kind of initiative supported by the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. So today we have invited a range of people to contribute. There's over 500 people who are participating as audience of this particular webinar. The idea is to really explore a range of issues around what social cohesion is about, and in a sense also set the agenda for the next 6 dialogues that are going to be conducted across various provinces. Bishop Mpumulwana of the SACC and Mayor Lebu Mafuku of the Oxfam are panelists. Vinolia Mabele, who's the social cohesion advocate, will also be part of that panel. We'll start with a video of social cohesion, just setting the tone for this. And after that, we will also get a message from the minister. I did talk to the minister earlier on, who unfortunately couldn't join because of a cabinet commitment, but left us with a message that will assist us to get our panel to just get their teeth into it. What is this social cohesion? How can it help us? And how can we reignite a conversation in society that could be useful for nation building? My name is JJ Tawan. I'll be a facilitator of this particular webinar and also of the dialogues that are coming up in the next few weeks. Welcome all of you who are the panel and also the audience. Let's take a look at the introductory video to this social cohesion series.
Our task as a society, and we must not lose sight of the bigger picture, is the unity of our people. Whatever their backgrounds, we've got to ensure that we unite our society.
Stop. Take notice. Start talking and take action. Become part of the wonderful social cohesion dialogues movement that is taking our whole country to a new level.
Yes, the Social Cohesion's Dialogue campaign is inspiring people all over the country to work together to play their part in moving South Africa forward and upward. It's all about the nation building, how each person can make a difference to those around them and build a stronger and more united South Africa for the future.
Change starts with everyone, and that includes you. You can be an agent of change in your community.
It's all about social cohesion. And what is social cohesion all about? Stand by. What you're about to hear is going to inspire and change your life.
Social cohesion is all about how each person can make a difference to those around them and build a stronger and more united South Africa for the future. Change starts with you. Everyone can be an agent of change in their community. Shine bright in the community where you are.
And here's how you can and absolutely must do it.
First of all, you must be a role model. The message giver is the strongest message. By having a healthy lifestyle, you will encourage others to also reduce their own risk. Stay in school, reduce teen pregnancy, reduce substance abuse, reduce HIV, TB and COVID-19 prevalence and GBV amongst your friends and contacts.
Then, help others to help themselves. Encourage young and even older people to make changes to benefit their own lives. And without waiting for someone else to do it, start doing something good for yourself.
Channel your energy to build your future and your country, rather than to break it down into negative values. And whilst you're doing it, keep a close watch on your stress levels and find constructive ways to let off steam.
Use your voice for good. Use your presence on social media to inspire others with positive messages.
Share any skills you may have with someone else that is eager to learn. Guide them to become financially and emotionally independent.
Make time to get to know someone outside of your comfort zone better and adjust your own behavior to honor their culture, language, and their differing customs.
So what else can you personally do? Here are some ideas, and you obviously will have some of your own. Organize a social cohesion talk group in your school or community to get people talking about social cohesion and how they can be change makers in their own communities.
Get involved in a local community project. Look for programs that get involved in your local area, such as those that teach financial literacy, those that support young people with homework, or coaching a local sports team.
Join or start a community crime watch. Stand up against violence, crime, and fear. Do not normalize things that break down trust and unity in your community.
Build a community where people can use their talents in music and art. Share your gifts with people in your community and with people outside your community, and then host a community arts event.
Create a theater show which tells a positive story of change.
Organize a community football match for young people.
Help improve what your area looks like so people can feel proud.
Get your class to go on a community clear-up, especially in areas that people use frequently.
Plant a market garden at your school or community library. It gets people involved and could provide much-needed nutrition to the community. Or paint a mural on a wall outside the school. But remember, don't forget to ask for permission first.
Find a local mentoring program to get involved in, where you can mentor or support a young person with their schoolwork or their search for employment.
So what is the background for this wonderful new initiative that has arrived in your life and in your community?
In 2012, the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture established a Social Cohesion Advocates Program made out of activists invited by the minister to serve voluntarily. They were tasked to assist with promoting national unity and social cohesion. Their mandate is drawn from the National Development Plan, Outcome 14, which has set the following 5 pillars of the medium-term strategic framework goals for South Africa to achieve by 2030.
Firstly, knowledge of the Constitution and fostering constitutional values.
Secondly, equalizing opportunities, promoting inclusion and redress.
Then promoting social cohesion across society through increased interaction across race and class.
Promoting active citizenry and broad-based leadership.
And finally, achieving a social compact that will lay the basis for equity, inclusion and prosperity for all.
So, to summarize, Social Cohesion Dialogues is led by the Social Cohesion's Advocate Programs and is made out of volunteer activists who are powered by the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture.
Yes, we wish to inspire all people living in South Africa to work together and to each do what is required to improve the status quo. We believe that collectively we will make headway on achieving the above goals as we each activate our own personal power to move ourselves, others, and South Africa forward and upwards.
The overall goal of Social Cohesion's Advocate Program is therefore geared to mobilize society in its entirety, to work together to building a caring and proud society based on shared values and a vision informed by a shared vision of a wonderful future for all of us.
Yes, it's all about advancing constitutional democracy, human rights, equality, and promoting non-racialism, non-tribalism, non-sexism, Ubuntu, and social solidarity. It's also about building unity in diversity among South Africans, as well as the region, the continent, and the international community.
And also, don't forget, it's about encouraging the healing of individuals and communities and promoting more intercultural and community cooperations between all of us by improving inclusivity and a sense of belonging for all, striving for transformation, redress, social justice in all areas of our society.
In short, it's about inspiring the empowered, inclusive, and active citizenry that will define our national consciousness and identity.
Right. We're going to continue the video. I understand that the panelists couldn't hear the launch video because they're on a different platform of Zoom when the rest, not where the rest of the audience, but the audience has heard the video. I'm going to skip the video of the minister because there's no point if the panelists can't hear it, and ask the technical team to figure out how this can happen, and we can play that video towards the end. So I'm going to get straight into the discussion. As I was correctly saying, I'm going to ask Bishop Mpumbulwana. Bishop, if you can show your video there, because I'm going to start with you to try and lay a basis. As one of the big, Bishop, please show your video. Otherwise, we can't see you. Yes, Bishop, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed, I can hear you, JJ.
Yes. So, Bishop, I'm saying since '94, one of the big discussions have been the issues of reconciliation in the country. There was then a new era with Thabo Mbeki's era going forward, where the focus was less on reconciliation and more on issues of economy, taxation, and so on. And a lot of people were talking about how that, the social cohesion has to take into account both things. So we can't just talk about reconciliation when there is poverty, there's inequality and unemployment, and those things don't seem to feature a lot in the questions of social cohesion. I would like you to lead us to say, as we are going around the country in the next few weeks, to talk about issues of race, gender, inequality, etc., on social cohesion, what should guide us in making this a more useful conversation? The issue of social cohesion has been discussed. I mean, the last summit was in 2012, where a lot of buzz about social cohesion happened. In between, there were things that were sporadic, but we now want to reignite, both as civil society and government, the issues of reconciliation. Can you lead us on what should be on the table if these social cohesion issues are to be useful, Bishop? And I ask the other panelists to respond to you once you are done.
Thank you, JJ. I think it's a risky thing to ask me to do that, because I probably will disagree with the theme. It says social cohesion is a critical catalyst to poverty eradication and nation building. I think that's an important recognition that poverty militates against nation building, and it promotes that social cohesion may be a pathway to both poverty eradication and nation building. I want to make an alternative point that the eradication of poverty and nation building are the necessary steps to achieve social cohesion. It's not the other way around. And that the dialogue on this, including the essential trade-offs to achieve this, must be discussed. In this regard, we would appeal that the concept of social cohesion must cross the bridge of reconciliation in the context of the promise of the post-apartheid South Africa. Now, of course, I come from the SACC, which points out that as a nation, we have not yet achieved the promise of the post-apartheid South Africa, which is a just, reconciled, peaceful, equitable, and sustainable society, free of racism, tribalism, xenophobia, and gender prejudices, free of corruption and deprivation, with food and shelter for all and every child born to grow to its God-given potential. But not much has changed in the apartheid social and economic stratification over the many years now. The failure to realize that promise of the post-apartheid South Africa becomes the failure of nation building. It is a failure to move from the divided, balkanized existence of racial, ethnic, and class oppositionality to a united South African nation, inclusive, forward-looking, and at peace with itself. It is a failure to live up to three significant propositions in the preamble to the Constitution, highlighted as saying, we, the people of South Africa, united in our diversity, adopt this Constitution and commit to heal the divisions of the past, to establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights, to improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person, and to build a united and democratic South Africa able to make its rightful place as a sovereign state in the family of nations. Now, these constitutional prescripts are part of the necessary chassis upon which to mount reconciliation towards social cohesion. But reconciliation devoid of socio-economic justice can only be but shallow, given the history of dispossession and material deprivation of the majority of South Africans. Lasting reconciliation requires redressing these historic injustices through inclusive and equitable economic development. And of course, the ultimate social cohesion would translate into what Archbishop Tutu called the Rainbow Nation, which I believe was only an aspirational statement whose reality required serious work to achieve. Now, hopefully, the dialogues we launched today and the conversations we were to have must be the beginning of that hard work towards national reconciliation for social cohesion. For if social cohesion is to catalyze poverty eradication, then there are certain realities that must be factored. First is that South Africa lives with an economically excluded majority. According to Stats SA, 99% of South African poverty is with so-called colors and so-called Africans, who together make up 90% of the voting population. This poor and disadvantaged majority comprises women, young people, and blacks in general, especially the so-called Africans. Rural people, especially in the historical Bantustans of the 1936 Land Act and the small dorpies of the hinterland with limited infrastructure, scanty economic livelihoods, and poor social services. I speak of places like Pampierstad, Koekhuis, Mara, Gingindlovu, and Mount Fletcher. For these people, talk of social cohesion is idle if it does not address their extreme poverty. We suggest that we need a post-COVID dispensation that says to them, you are excluded no more. Social cohesion requires a post-COVID agenda of economic transformation to deliberately and systematically enhance human dignity and the quality of life by enabling the participation in the productive economy of poor citizens and the disadvantaged majority, the process that progressively engenders wealth redistribution. South Africans share a geographic space called South Africa, but there is no common South African nation with a common allegiance and a common set of values with symbols that represent those values. Racial divides, ethnic divides, and divides on economic status, on which Mr. Thabo Mbeki mounted his nation's critique of South Africa. All these make for a fractious society. You mentioned, DJ, Thabo Mbeki's time of economic instead of social cohesion. Now, of the two nations Mbeki spoke about, he said one of these nations is white, relatively prosperous, regardless of gender or geographic dispersal. It has ready access to a developed economic, physical, educational, and communication and other infrastructure. Then he said the second and larger nation of South Africa is black and poor, with the worst affected being women in the rural areas, and I would add women and young people. The black rural population in general and the disabled. He says they live under conditions of a grossly underdeveloped economic, physical, and educational, communication, and other infrastructure, which has no visibility, no possibility to exercise what in reality amounts to a theoretical right to equal opportunity. With that right being equal within this nation, only to the extent that it is equally incapable of realization. Now, Mbeki concluded, this reality of two nations underwritten by the perpetual racial, gender, and spatial disparities is born of colonial and apartheid white minority domination. And it constitutes material base which reinforces the notion that indeed we're not one nation, but two nations. Now, I want to suggest that this initiative should contribute to addressing this in earnest, the challenge of nation building for a united and prosperous South Africa. For even as Tutu was talking about the aspirational rainbow nation, Mbeki was pronouncing on the reality of the country's division that deny our common nationhood and our pretense at nation building. He warned that the longer this situation persists, in spite of the gift of hope delivered to the people by the birth of democracy, the more entrenched will be the conviction that the concept of nation building is a mere mirage, that no basis exists or even will ever exist to enable national reconciliation to take place. And this was in 1998, JJ, 4 years into democracy, and Tutu still had a good 24 years to be around to champion this rainbow nation. Had we as a nation recognized the warnings of the Mbeki diagnosis and the prospect of the Tutu proposed destination of South African nation, we may have had a different trajectory to experience. Therefore, for social cohesion, we must negate the mirage prospect and find our way towards Tutu's aspirational message of the rainbow nation. And I want to suggest, as what the SSCC extends its understanding of reconciliation, often seen as only referring to racial or ethnic reconciliation, to include addressing poverty and inequality, economic transformation, the challenge of family life, and the declining public trust in state institutions. And therefore, the wounds that are inflicted by the past, which are often unconscious and show up in the fracture of the social fabric and the desolation that characterizes our human relations. The current reality of South Africa says it all: physical, emotional, and spiritual hunger manifest in poverty, domestic violence, and the breakdown of family life, drug and alcohol abuse, hopelessness, religious gullibility, low self-esteem, mistrust and despair, social distress, crime and lawlessness, racism, xenophobia, ethnic cocoonism, the perpetual anger and general violence that are a running thread of society. Now, the July 2021 unrest is testimony to a range of these manifestations of societal brokenness, compounded by misdirected politics. Now, on the ethnic divides that Mbeki spoke about in 1998, the more serious question is whether we can build a common South African nation with a common identity if we retain our ethnic provinces as political power bases. One cannot be premier of Northwest without being a Mutswana, or the Free State without being a Mosotho, nor of KZN without being Umzulu, with a legislature opened festively by the King of Amazulu to assert the ethnic identity of the legislature and the province. If over 600 billion rand budgeted for provinces, including ethnic legislatures, were to be voted instead for an aggressive nation building that involves economic inclusion for reconciliation, it could go a long way to the realization of national reconciliation for social cohesion. The case is made, therefore, for a deliberate and systematic manner of addressing South Africa's disintegration where the standard does not hold, where a terribly divided society where those with money can opt out of the system and live like nothing matters, as private services become the solution, private education, private health services, private security services, insulation, with everything managed electronically, even private church. In this context, we must commit to a ministry of healing and going beyond dealing merely with manifestations of woundedness, but engaging with the deep root causes of woundedness for a lasting impact and to help bring about a more reconciled and just society. Therefore, for social cohesion to be an effective catalyst to poverty eradication and nation building, or rather, as I would put it, for social cohesion to result from poverty eradication and nation building, it must be foundation on 4 critical considerations. 1, economic transformation for the rapid inclusion of the excluded majority. This is the most urgent, without which there will be neither peace nor security, and social cohesion will remain a pipe dream. 2, an investment in the young for a positive future. Young people with no hope for their future are a recipe for the hopelessness of South Africa as a whole. 3, mobilizing for a one identity South Africa, one nation, based on positive public values for which all our institutions must socialize: the education system, religious formations, initiation schools, and the broadcasting platforms, to create a sense of South Africanness that we all can be proud to identify with, defining in character the one identity South Africa, one nation. There must be a firm foundation of public values and minimum standards that should inform societal behavior as well as the governmental environment and services for the common good, regardless of who is in government. Finally, review of the continued apartheid ethnicization of governance through ethnic provinces. In addition, possible constitutional changes that need to be considered to create a governmental system that is distinctly accountable to citizens in order to build public trust and responsiveness to government initiatives. South Africans have become quite cynical and untrusting of what government can promise and do about restoring public trust in the institutions of state. The case of the flag that was proposed by the minister, and Minister Natim Tetwa, is a case in point that people are very cynical and untrusting. They're already believing that somebody is lined up to steal the money. JJ, that's what I have to say. But in essence, it is to say social cohesion is a result, it is a result of the other things, not the other way around.
All right, thank you, Bishop. I think that the big thing is, are South Africans even interested in a conversation about social cohesion? And that's what I would like to hear from the rest of the audience. I wanted to bring the minister's message before I bring Aus Lebo and Aus Vinolia to comment. The panel can switch on to the YouTube link to follow that video, but I'm sure the rest of the audience will be able to hear it. So, Brand, if we can play that video where I had a chat with the minister about his own views on this, and I'll ask Aus Lebo to follow, and then Aus Vinolia to close.
Well, thanks, JJ. Day work, we deal with subjects which affect people, like gender-based violence and femicide, issues of racism, of xenophobia, incidents such as the alleged Stellenbosch University, the importance to embrace symbols and monuments which unite us, the need to make an effort to understand and embrace traditional values and systems of others, such as learning to speak, read, and write other languages other than your own language. As you know, that South Africa has 11 official languages. It's those very practical things, and all of these things which attempt to establish shared values in our polarized, diverse society, and that could cement common nationhood and bring a sense of and bring a sense of belonging. And it would be such important matters as what perhaps you see happening. In our department, for instance, we're leading a three-pronged approach in the fight against GBVF and wellness program. This relates to SILAPA program, which deals with mental issues affecting artists, athletes, and so on. The second part of it is Hulikane, which deals mainly with the conversation and the focus on the boy child and how to socialize, the socialization thereof. So this program is run by men, which is mainly conversation, mainly fireside conversations between sons and fathers. The third one is what we call Bakawafazi, which is mainly a platform created by young women for the survivors of GBV in our country. So it's practical things which make people respond to this. For instance, there's been a whole issue of this social unrest in Durban last year and part of Gauteng, for instance. Our social cohesion advocates have been on the ground, and they have in all these places, Phoenix and around Durban and so on, and engaging communities. And that has helped to lessen tensions, particularly in those communities. I can say that actually our strong sense of South African pride should be what frames our choices and efforts. A basic example is how we sing the national anthem. It can be taken as something very easy, but it goes to the level of consciousness of citizens, of who they are. The AU anthem. In fact, I can tell you, JJ, that in South Africa today, the reality is that our youth, especially learners, are the ones who know more about the continent, including the AU anthem, than older people in society. But also, when, for example, you see conflicts brewing amongst members of your community, should you not play a part? I mean, this thing of looking away is not going to be an answer if we are to build a socially coherent nation. So this call for community and individual commitments is not to excuse government from playing a role in creating a conducive environment that must ensure socioeconomic emancipation, which will also impact on social cohesion, because social cohesion is not just an empty phrase. It's about lived experiences, and it's about people's life, their quality being better. So there's no dichotomy between the two. So the call for commitment to social cohesion to be owned by each and every one of us as individuals is not because we are blind to the reality of our social, economic, racial and spatial structures being deeply intertwined and entrenched with extreme inequality and deterministic consequences for the majority of the people. The point is that notwithstanding and over and above such needs, each one of us has a role to play to move South Africa forward. Well, social cohesion advocates, JJ, are the independent, very independent brigade appointed by the minister to foster social cohesion and nation building at a very basic level of community. Important to emphasize is that these are volunteers who utilize their passion, their experience and expertise to evangelize about social cohesion. Notwithstanding efforts to support the rollout program, it is important to stress that it is not so much government's push that such exemplary work is undertaken. And these are individual citizens who want to see our country moving forward, want to see harmony, social cohesion amongst our people. So instead, it is also a program government is focused on supporting, because ours really is to support such initiatives. and growing base of a collaborative understanding with community leaders. And these are the people, JJ, who have crisscrossed the country, organize meetings in communities. We refer to them as community conversations, with the sole aim of avoiding any possible future conflict in our society, but also initiating that people should come together. So I think that to the extent that we understand these are people who are doing work voluntarily, I think a lot of work, and we applaud them for that. Is really to heal, is really to focus on the preamble of the Constitution itself, of healing the divisions of the past. So that's a fundamental point. You know, JJ, artists have been, because they are creatives, have created a lot of work. There is a duet of one lady from Inanda Kwamashu area, and a gentleman, and both of them are musicians from Phoenix. They formed this bond since the unrest last year to practically, take people through the process of social cohesion, that even in conflictual situation, you should find a way of coming together, of meeting as a people and so on. So the department's mandate is not merely one of entertainment and play. It goes far deeper, as the portfolios of sport, arts, and culture appeals to our deeper emotional and mental state, insofar as matters of social cohesion is concerned. Who can forget, for instance, JJ, the 1995 Rugby World Cup, the impact that had in uniting society, the 1996 African Cup of Nations. I can count a lot of them. But the most important thing is that everything should be done in our power to ensure that our people share spaces, because the apartheid spatial development has made people to be strangers. So the more we are closer to each other and interact each other and get to know each other, we really are going to contribute positively in building a united and socially coherent nation. That's the reason why we've been eager to ensure that the festivals, concerts are open, sporting activities are open, because there it's not a mechanical process. It's a natural process where people come together and they are united around these very important events and activities. And that, is one way of planting seeds of unity amongst people. And if you see them at the stadium, in the festival, it doesn't really matter who's around you. People just get there and get happy and want to see progress going forward. So the more people share spaces, the more we're going to be coming closer and closer to each other. Notwithstanding challenges of society, but we are forging forward on this, and we urge all in our society to be part and parcel of this commitment. My message is to remind South Africans that we reached the 1994 democratic breakthrough because we understood the power of conversation amongst ourselves, even on issues where we don't agree. Let us endeavor to find each other, and we will find each other. We've gone through difficult periods. Right now, it's a point where we are constructing a nation. So I think it is within our power to reach out to the next person and ensure that we converse on all matters, as I said, including difficult matters. And it's only that way that we are going to build a nation, because the process of nation building essentially started in 1994. And before that, there was no process of nation building to talk about. So it is possible.
I was saying that that should give us something to chew on in terms of the discussion. Auslebu, you can give us your input. You've heard what the bishop had to say. You've heard what the minister had to say.
Thanks, JJ, and thank you for having me. Let me first thank the Bishop Mpumlwana for his opening remarks, because I think for me, and I think it's relevant because he's a bishop, we can say amen. He really summarized it for me, JJ, around, what comes first. And so where I was going to start is the fact that the term social cohesion is thrown around a lot, and in my view, without a real understanding of what is social cohesion and how do you achieve social cohesion. And I could not, unfortunately, hear the video that was played before the minister spoke, but what was very apparent for me was the fact that in that video, we focused a lot on individual action and did not speak about the systemic and structural issues that either enable social cohesion or disable social cohesion. And Bishop Mpumlwana, I think, did a very, very good job in explaining what are some of those social and structural issues. And I think for me, I normally get very triggered when I see some of these videos, because number one, I don't think that they are sincere. I think we sell images that basically tug at strings, but with every image that I have seen, I could question how the environment in South Africa, in the arts, in sports, in education, in communities, is one such that the systemic and structural issues do not support social cohesion. We are not, sadly, to come back to what the minister is saying, going to achieve social cohesion by having people go around and speak. We are going to address social cohesion, which is a sense of belonging, a sense of solidarity, a sense of connectedness, when we address the structural and social issues that basically other others, that basically make people feel disconnected, and that has sown mistrust in our communities. That is fundamentally what we need to be doing in addressing those issues. I think it's also a fundamental flaw in our argument that says that social cohesion was built in 1994. Because I think the history of liberation in this country and liberation was won not because political parties liberated South Africans, or even individuals in political parties, or even individual political parties, but a lot of the solidarity that was built in different communities. If you look at the United Democratic Front, when the political parties were banned, and how they managed to galvanize everybody in society around various projects that were about the liberation of the country, you will understand, what the solidarity meant. And so to go back in agreement to what Bishop said, I think you will never achieve solidarity and a sense of belonging in South Africa when South Africa has moved to be one of the most unequal country in the world to being the most unequal country in the world. And I think COVID was a great example that showed us just, and as Bishop Mpumlwana said it, how different South Africa's exist in the same geographic space. So for an example, during COVID, it is the major retailers in our communities, formal businesses who could even trade for food, but the informal traders, the mother that really relies on selling at the corner street to make a profit of 20 rands, 50 rands to be able to feed their families could not trade. And even as we adopted the scientifically known measures of dealing with COVID, we did not understand what it would mean. So where is social cohesion, which is about connectedness, which is about solidarity, when we even make those decisions when we are dealing with a crisis in the country? You cannot speak about a social cohesion in any society when there is lack of transparency, particularly around how resources are allocated. I think the fact that we needed a national outcry to stop the erection of a flag for 22 million at a time when the country is unable to feed its poor, who have been historically marginalized. You can't speak about us still living the views or the values that we founded and put in our constitution in 1994. But it's not only about that. It's also about at municipal level, how the integrated development plans are developed, who has a seat at the table, how are some of these decisions made, who spends the money, how is that money spent, and how is it being accounted for, and who gets included and who gets excluded when we do and we speak about social cohesion. What happened in this country if the Department of Arts, Sports and Culture drives social cohesion, where artists had to question how resource allocation, resources that were meant for artists at that period, we could not account how they were so disproportionately distributed. And then we still say, let us go to the arts. You go to the arts. You know, where do you go to thereafter? What happened with the Global Citizen Concert when people went to a concert and a lot of women were raped and a lot of women were harassed at the end? Where do we go after those concerts? And I think for me, what triggers me about our conversations about social cohesion is that we have watered it down so much that it sounds like the freely stuff where we can basically wave a magic wand and singing together, singing a national anthem, doing things is going to be what brings us together as a people, when in fact we are not addressing not only the substantive issues of violence against women, not only the substantive issues of racism, but how we create an enabling environment to really even use the limited resources that we have, to deal with social cohesion. So I am even thinking that a country that is interested in social cohesion do not have one ministry like what we have in South Africa, which is the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture dealing with social cohesion, but the entire government and the entire modus of governance that speaks about equity is going to build social cohesion. And that is how we are going to deal with poverty. That is how we are going, even when we speak our budgets, even when we announce and we have a budget speech, that it is not only going to be pro-poor, but it is also going to be gendered. Because at the end of the day, even in this discussion, it is poor Black women who bear the brunt of the disconnectedness. We can't speak about social cohesion in this country when we don't address the low levels of trust in government institutions. And this low level of trust in government institutions is not only at national government, but it is around all spheres of government. Nowadays, when you are a South African and a citizen, particularly with some of us who are addressing as part of our stated intention, inequality is wherever you go, in rural areas, you will be told about chiefs who are basically in cahoots with global entities to sell the land that is supposed to be held in their care and to international interests and those with money. When you get to local government, you are faced with basically decisions that are made where monies disappear. And across the levels, there is such low levels of trust in government institutions. So before we even speak about social cohesion, which is a result of addressing all of these major social, economic, political, structural barriers to basically helping us get connected, to help us feel solidarity, to help us feel like we belong, which are all definitions of social cohesion. Without us addressing those, we can't be singing and clapping and going to festivals together. And I think that definition really waters down what is social cohesion. It is not a magic wand. It is what you do as you govern the world, as you build solidarity. And solidarity cannot be artificial. The dream, as Bishop Mpumlwana said, or the aspiration of a rainbow nation means that it wasn't supposed to be business as usual in South Africa. Means that we needed to do things very radically in firstly understanding who was in the margins, and secondly, what are the principles and policies and implementation that we are going to need to make sure that those that had been outside of what was South Africa, a pre-democracy, become part of South Africa. And what has happened in this country, more than anything, is that the color of the person at the table has changed, but it is the same table that operates when a number of people are excluded. And right now, the people that are excluded, that are on the margins, are largely the same people that were excluded and that were on the margins. And we do not have the wherewithal to basically, if we are going to say, as the minister says in his speech, be honest, let's speak about how, in fact, we have not been true to the aspiration in the way that we have done things. And I think what makes this even worse at this point in time is that we are also operating where globally the forces towards the right are growing. The spaces for civic engagement is reducing. We are seeing across the globe, because we cannot speak about social cohesion and only speak about geographic social cohesion and not talk about what is happening generally in the world around how populism, which finds expression in South African politics, in South African society, is a wave that we are seeing across the world. But more importantly, how instruments and the machinery of disinformation have seen itself in South Africa, driven from elsewhere. It's not so long ago that we were talking about Bell Pottinger, that were agencies, as we were looking at the fight and watching, we were bystanders, and we still are in this country, where we are watching the ruling party basically cannibalize and eat at each other, and how the agencies of disinformation have infiltrated our body politic, so that even in the way that we sit down and we talk is going to get worse, because even what we talk about is influenced sometimes by agendas that are not ours. So, I mean, as I said, I want to say amen to what Bishop said. The agenda of social cohesion is not an individual agenda. It's not how me and you, everything in that video, people are starting soccer clubs, they've got no support. People are starting music groups and cultural groups, they've got no support. Artists are out there, not only the two that the minister has spoken about. In every corner of South Africa, there is an artist that is there, there is no support. Women are saving together, they are coming together, they are educating children. When you see people ululating in UKZN, Those are mothers, those are grandmothers that have done amazing things against the odds. What would be important to understand is, as a country, how are we creating the necessary political, social, and economic and remove those barriers that make social cohesion important. And the more we fight for a much more equitable and equal society, the more we change the table, and not only who is sitting at the eating table, is the more that we will realize social cohesion. Thank you.
Thank you, Auste, for that. There's a lot to chew over there. More to your point, Manda, on the chart over there says everything should be also be done to ensure that people living with disabilities are also actively included in such dialogues. So I think that's more to your point, that the barriers need to be removed. There are lots to comment on in that regard. And of course, you are welcome to put your questions in the chat if you want to engage with the panel. Let me ask Vinolia Mabele, who's one of the social cohesion advocates, to weigh in on the discussion that has ensued. Vinolia? Vinolia, please unmute yourself.
All right, thank you very much, JJ. I've got two windows open, so I was hearing the other feedback from the other side. Thank you very much to everyone that is watching and listening in, and also to the minister's speech, as well as the bishop and Auslebo. I think they have alluded a lot on no confidence in government. And as a social cohesion advocate, I'm coming in, in the sense of why this program was designed. And this program was designed on the basis of closing the gap between what government is trying to achieve and what society wants. Because sometimes people feel that government cannot relate to what exactly their needs are. They cannot relate to they cannot listen and understand what their concerns are. And I think the issue of social cohesion would be addressed once government starts to listen to the people. And that is obviously through dialogues such as your social cohesion dialogues, and this one of this nature, where we are really closing the gap and going to the ground level of the people. And that is what social cohesion advocates are doing. At this point, we still have other government sectors that do not know about social cohesion advocates. And I think Auslebo also mentioned it, that it should be a program that is known and is everyone is active in ensuring that we achieve the social cohesion that we are saying we want to achieve. And that should not only be the work of the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, but it should be across the board. But as it stands, you still have other sectors where, as a social cohesion advocate, I still need to introduce myself and explain what I do as a social cohesion advocate. So it goes now to saying, how do we bring these dialogues to society when government also does not even understand these dialogues themselves and what the mandate should be? So each and everyone in government, they should be inducted about this, the dialogues. So it should start from the parents. Government is our parents. So it should start from there. All officials should be talking social cohesion. Everyone in South Africa will then start to understand exactly what social cohesion is about. And now the reason why there is no confidence at this point, it's because obviously there are things that have been happening in society, in government, that has made people not to trust government. And we see it and we hear from people when we host these dialogues that they do not want to hear anything anymore about government. People are tired of these dialogues. People want to see action. And that is what, as social cohesion advocates, we are now driving, that people are really tired of talk shows. They want to see action, and it will now start happening once we start taking all these reports that are submitted from these dialogues and ensure that they are implemented in that manner. If people say they want to see sports grounds in schools that are more maintained, that should be happening. That is what the social cohesion we should be driving. That is what when we say a dialogue, we should be seeing exactly the issues that are being addressed and concerns that are being addressed by the communities happening. Now, we still have a situation where we've got we've got officials that cannot relate and understand the pain and suffering of the people on the ground. And that is because we speak in different levels. We don't speak in a sense where people can really, we can really understand each other from where we come from. So until such actually takes place, then we can really start seeing that unity, non-racial, non-sexist, and equal and democratic society. So as social cohesion advocates, we have embarked on many programs. We are actually addressing all sectors. We've got different work streams. We've got the GBV work stream, which focuses on women empowerment and gender equality, as well as GBV topics as well. We also have education. We've got climate change. We've got people living with disabilities. So we also do have a work stream that is focused predominantly on people that are living with disabilities. The elderly are also addressed. We've got community safety programs. So those are programs that are there to ensure that people really are heard and their concerns are actually addressed. And that is what the work of the social cohesion is working towards achieving. So Bishop spoke about that. The importance of young people driving the social cohesion program, because what is the point of these discussions happening at a higher level and not inclusive of young people? Because young people should now be taking the baton and moving forward. And I would just take you I'll give you a little brief of the program that we had during this Africa Month called the Young African Ambassadors. That is where we are now addressing the Agenda 2063. And as a social cohesion advocate, I'm looking at such programs. So we are going to communities like this one that we had. We did it in the Vaal Triangle, where we are bringing young people to understand this this dialogue and to understand this Agenda 2063 that we want to achieve, and that young people are the ones that should be now shaping the South Africa and Africa that we want to achieve. Because without the involvement of young people, we are going to continue having situations of operations to do like KZN massacre. We will never move forward because young people have more power in terms of driving conversations, in terms of what people are doing out there. So if young people are sick and tired of government, if young people are saying they're tired of dialogue, then we're going to have a hot mess in our society. We are not going to have a structured society, but we need to start shaping and preparing young people to be the leaders in order for us to achieve the social cohesion that we say we want to achieve. Because if young people are not a part of this, we will continue having these dialogues and we will never move forward and actually achieving the social cohesion and nation building that we seek to achieve. So on that note, program director, the social cohesion advocates, their mandate is to ensure that they close those little gaps that government is trying to filter to the communities, and actually make sure that they are actually implemented. So what I can say is we need to see more people coming onto the fore and ensuring that they become part of the solution, because it is a responsibility of each and every one of us, and not just government or the social cohesion advocates, but we should all start owning the narrative of social cohesion and nation building. It should be our mandate as society. I'm going to leave it there, Director.
Thank you, Vinolia. Just going to ask the panelists to give me their parting shot, because we've run out of time and I would like to round off. That's the response to the other panelists. I'm going to ask Bishop. Bishop, you've been quite a bit now. I would like you to give us your parting shot. What should be done? What are the one or two things that, as we conduct these provincial dialogues, we must be conscious of? And what can we use to shape that agenda to be more on the constructive side of how we take this forward? Then I'll ask Ausley to also respond.
I think that I've just heard now from Vinolia that there is a program of social cohesion champions, and I'd wonder if they, as a group of champions, have grasped the challenge that we are posing, that social cohesion is an end, not a beginning, and that therefore they should also be looking carefully at how government is promoting the fundamental spokes that make for the wheel of a cohesive society. I think that is not something that, as I think has already been indicated, it cannot lie with the Minister of Arts, Culture and Sport. It really is a governmental issue, and it's something that all government and all aspects of society should be working on. I think it would be a pity if we can go to the public communications, social media and all that without dealing with these fundamentals, because if we do, we will probably get the same rejection that people gave the flag if social cohesion is not dealing with the fundamentals.
All right. On the chat box, someone called Ngoba who's writing from KZN talks about the GBV killings in villages and says that there's a need for a social compact interventions to be entered into with the Department of Sports, Art and Culture to give awareness of drug abuse and so on, and GBV, etc., etc. That shows that people would rather focus on specific issues that are bothering them. So social cohesion, as the Bishop was saying, maybe the end, maybe where we could get to. It'd be interesting to know what you think about the state of social cohesion. Does it mean that the state of equal cohesion is reflected by all these problems? And so you could almost say the social cohesion is a bridge too far. Auslebu?
So firstly, I want to caution, and I think Bishop was there, that young people like Vinolia must not be given a poison chalice and go into communities, which is what this government is very good at doing, is coming with a lot of programs without even understanding what has worked and what has not worked before. Firstly, the ideas of stadiums, we know how all of these things became white elephants in different places. I agree with the fact that young people must be involved, but as Bishop said, if the very original understanding of what is social cohesion, the theoretical understanding, but also how you get to it, that it is an end you achieve when government has done what government is supposed to do fundamentally, then we are going to be having volunteers going around. We are going to pat ourselves on the back that they've gone around, but we are going to be exactly where we were before. Because even right now, when you are talking about we are addressing a GBV, why is this happening outside the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence, which is mainly funded by the private sector, and we are not seeing government bringing their money into it? So this idea of programmatizing the things that should be our way of being and our way of doing things want us to be piecemeal. And I think it's a tick box exercise. We have this program, therefore this thing will not shift. We are doing what my daughter normally says, and no offense to you, Bishop, my daughter likes saying, look busy, Jesus is coming. Not be busy, but just look busy, because you don't want to be found to be idle. We are not being strategic in the way that we say we need social cohesion. Many projections are that if we don't deal with poverty and inequality in South Africa, the next uprisings are going to make what happened in July look like a mini circus. And to go around and now have a program with volunteers, when in fact the systemic environment that is creating lack of belonging, lack of solidarity, lack of trust, lack of connectedness are not being addressed, I hold no hope in what this program says, no matter how enthusiastic and well-meaning everybody else is going. So I think, JJ, you said that you are going to be doing these dialogues when you go on. Can we please, in these dialogues, do not think that we can dumb down the issues and really make them vain and superficial. Let's basically address the fundamental issues of state failure, the fundamental problems. Even in the Eastern Cape, we don't need awareness. We need accountability. We need social consequences. We need a justice system that works. We need a police force that knows what to do and not go to polls and visit families when their loved ones have died. We need police stations in some of these communities. As a South African, I really do not want to be told it's all of our business. I've worked in the NGO sector doing social justice work for 30 years, and the biggest obstacle has been government in the field of work. So I generally want to say, let's learn not only from what is happening now. This new launch of a program just does not excite me, because we like programs. You know, there'll be program after program. August is coming. There'll be a program on Women's Month. We program. We print T-shirts. We organize people. We do catering. Those are the only people that basically get anything of substance. But the circumstances stay the same, because those determinants, social, economic, political determinants, don't shift, and there is no political will to shift them. Let us not make people go around and do things that are not going to make a difference.
All right. Let's hear Ausvinole, your response there as we round off.
Thank you very much, JJ. I think Oslebu has said it, that, you know what, people need to start taking accountability. And I'm going to emphasize again that the program of social cohesion, everyone should be given a voice to be heard. And people want government to start listening to their concerns. And I'm going to emphasize again that the role of social cohesion advocates is to do exactly that, to close that gap of having one program after another, because these conversations are exactly what social cohesion advocates are doing, which is dialogues and programs, you know. But at the end of each of these programs, there are recommendations and reports that are submitted to government to say, this is what people want. And until we start actioning on those concerns, then we'll continue having these dialogues and talk shops and not really addressing what the people want. So we want to start seeing action. We want to start seeing accountability, and we want government to start listening and not be tone deaf. I think just to touch a little bit on the issue of the flag. The flag was a great and brilliant concept, especially looking at the racial divisions of this country. However, government was tone deaf on what the people want at this point. So it was a matter of timing more than anything. So I think as social cohesion advocates, ours is to ensure that we bridge that gap. And that program should be really supported, because that's what actually gets people to reach government, because it's difficult for a person from the communities to come to government and say to minister, this is what I want. So what we are actually trying to do here is to now make the language become more easier, because even these dialogues, we speak in high level, we speak in languages that people really cannot understand. We use terminologies that people, someone from Kwakwa cannot really even understand what we are talking about. So it also goes to language, the language barrier. And someone said it in the comments about people with disabilities. What about those who are deaf? What are we saying about those people? So in closing, JJ, I think listening is very important to what people would want to see, and also supporting the social cohesion program, because that is what will close this gap. And once we give it a chance, that's when we will actually start seeing results and actioning on those concerns that are brought from communities by the advocates to government. We want to start seeing those recommendations and reports being actioned, instead of having another dialogue after another dialogue. And what is happening with all the recommendations? I'm going to close it there, JJ.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this has given us a clear if you like, list of issues we need to look at. And I think, Auslebu, one of the things that you raised about our approach to these dialogues, to assure you that we are not there just to sort of just sugarcoat things in a sense. The idea is to have a conversation that says, what are we going to do? What building blocks can we put in place? For example, we're expecting that in these conferences or dialogues in provinces, that civil society must take a lead to say, okay, what are we going to do, going forward, rather than wait for another conference or another dialogue in another 10 years or whatever the case may be. So it must really be robust, at the same time constructive, to make sure that we can have building blocks coming out of there that would, in a sense, maintain the momentum, both of conversation, which is still necessary if you look at what's going on around us, plus, or rather more importantly, of actions that all of us must take, but government must do their bit, business to do their bit, civil society to do their bit. I want to ask the convener, Ms. Dylan Mark, just to give us a sense of what's coming up in the next few weeks as we round off this conversation. Dylan, it's over to you.
Thank you, JJ. Well, let me just start by saying thank you very much to Bishop Malusi for your contribution and for some of the very critical questions that you've asked, and some of the ideas that you have for solutions, and also to Lebo and Venolia for your contributions. I think we've heard also from the minister that the department has the intention of driving a process of social cohesion. So I think that's something positive that we can look forward to. We've heard, of course, the challenges. We've heard some of the failures of the past. But I think what we need to be acknowledging is that we now need all of you to participate. We need you to be able to bring people from civil society, from faith-based organizations, from the sports, from the arts, from the education sector, to come along and have open conversations, just to understand how we can contribute towards social cohesion. I think also to the process, the provincial dialogues will enable us to understand the role of the social cohesion advocates, and building on current activities by the department, making sure that we have an integrated approach that involves all sectors of society, and how do we move forward, looking at solutions. So as we've heard the panelists say, we don't really want to talk about this all the time, but what are the practical things that we can do to move South Africa forward in nation building as we deal with the challenges of poverty, of inequality? So in the next couple of months, between now and August, there are 5 dialogues that will happen in person, and you should be able to see on your screen the upcoming dialogues in different provinces that will starting in the Western Cape on the 2nd of June, which will be at the Belmont Park. And each of the dialogues has a theme. We will then follow that with a dialogue in Gauteng on the 9th of June, in KwaZulu-Natal, and in the Free State and Northern Cape, and concluding on the 4th of August in the Eastern Cape. So over the next couple of days, you will get more information. We will email you details, and if you are in a province where you're able to attend, sign up and register, and do encourage your fellow organizations to also come along and be part of the process where we look for solutions. We are glad that the Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture will be able to be in person at all of these dialogues. So there's an opportunity also to raise your voice, and also for the department and for government, for business, for civil society to hear what are the challenges that we need to work on together. So I will leave it at that, JJ. I'm not sure if the screen with activities has come up for people to see. I don't see it on my screen, so I'm not sure if everyone else has seen it. But do, if you've signed up with an email, we will send you the information after this webinar. Thank you, JJ. Over to you.
All right, thank you, Delene. And I would like to thank all the panelists and all the many participants on the who registered to be part of this important webinar. We will obviously have some more webinars and stuff post the dialogues, but as Delene was saying, the most important is for now, for the next few weeks, we'll be going province to province to try and get conversations going. The first one, of course, on the 2nd of June, will be in Cape Town. That's where we're starting. And we're hoping that that is going to be a success. But thank you very much for your participation. As we know, Bishop Mbumulana from the South African Council of Churches, really a privilege to have all of you on this panel and having made the time to be with us. The dialogue is adjourned for now, but we hope to talk to you soon. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Thank you, JJ.
South Africa. Uit die blauw van onze hemel,
uit die diepte van ons hier,
waar ons ewige gebergtes van die kranse aanvoer gee.
sounds the call to come together.